Hello guys and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to build a keyboard in 2022. This will be a step-by-step guide and I'll basically be going over everything you need to know all in this video. So the first thing I wanted to touch on are the supplies you will need. So of course you will need your keyboard kit, you need stabilizers, switches, keycaps, Krytox 205 grade 0, dielectric grease, a screwdriver, and some form of neoprene foam or some case foam for the keyboard case. Now I'll be leaving most of the links that you will need in the description below if you do plan on buying from some of the things that I'm talking about. Now that you have all of these, I have some other optional things that you may need for different mods that we might be doing in this video. So some of the optional things that I recommend is PE foam. You can buy it on Amazon, and painter's tape. So we'll be doing two different mods that require those two different things. Now, another thing that is also optional is buying some band-aids or finding band-aids laying around and tweezers. You may also need syringes as well for something we will be doing for the stabilizers. So the first thing I want to do whenever I build my keyboard is I want to tune and lube my stabilizers, because that usually takes the longest. Now to correctly lube your stabilizers, you first want to put some lube on a tiny paintbrush or something like that, and you want to coat the tiny stem part of the stabilizer on the sides, not the top, the sides of it, with at least 1 to 2 swipes on each side. Then the next thing you want to do is lube the inside of the bigger stabilizer housing. This is with Krytox 205 grade 0. Then you want to get your dielectric grease and dip the stabilizer wire into the dielectric grease. Once you have all of that, you put the stabilizer together and it should sound pretty good. When inserting the wire into the stabilizer stem, you want to make sure it's going into the side with 2 holes in it, not 1. If you have it inserted to the side that only has 1 hole, then the stabilizer will not work. So you want to make sure you insert it to the side of the stem that has 2 holes. Now, if you're going to have a keyboard and it comes with screw-in stabilizers, those usually will be better and you won't have to mod them or do something called a band-aid mod on them as if you had plate-mounted stabilizers, because plate-mounted stabilizers usually have more rattle to them and they're not as balanced. So if you have screw-in stabilizers, usually from my experience, all I had to do was lube the wire with dielectric grease and lube the housing of the stabilizer with 205 grade 0 that I mentioned. But if you do have plate mounted stabilizers and you notice that you did all the lube and it still rattles and you still hear some ticking in the spacebar or the other modifier keys, then you may want to try out the Band-Aid mod. I won't really be showing it here in this video because I suck at doing this because it requires stable hands and my hands shake a lot, but that's what you will need the band-aids and the tweezers for. So both of those two things will go hand in hand for the Band-Aid mod. Now another thing you may have to do is tune your stabilizer wires. And basically what that means is if you lay the wire on a flat surface and you tap each side, and there is some ticking or some wobbling to it, that means the wire is not straight and there is some warping to it. So what you would do is you get 2 syringes and you insert each side onto the syringe and you would bend it in the direction that it was wobbling on, trying to get it to be straight enough so you won't have any of that ticking that I mentioned earlier. You can find videos on YouTube, there's plenty of videos on, but I'm probably the last person you should ask about doing these 2 things because I'm not really good at them myself. So then you want to install your stabilizers once they're all put together. For the screw-in stabilizers, you have to screw them into the PCB, and for the plate-mounted stabilizers, you just need to put them into the plate. Now the third step is optional, but a lot of people do it, and that is lubing switches. Usually for linear switches, people like to use Krytox 205 grade 0, but for tactiles, people use something else. I think it's something Tribosis 30203. I'm not too sure because I personally don't have the time to do that since I am in college, so I am not a lubing expert. I'm just going to say this step is optional, but a lot of people recommend it to have a smoothing typing experience. This next thing is the PE foam mod, and this is obviously optional because it was in the optional supplies that I recommended you get. And basically what you're going to do is get a thin sheet of PE foam and cut it to the size of your PCB. You're going to make holes for the stabilizers if it is a PCB mount stabilizers. It can cause the stabilizers to become mushy if you don't cut out holes for the stabilizer housings. So once you have that all together, you want to make holes in the middle of where each switch is going to go in. You would get like a screwdriver of any sort and you would just push a little bit into the indentation where the switch goes in. Once you have all of that together, you would get the PCB foam if you do have some, and then you would put the plate on top of the PCB foam, and then you would screw everything together if the plate does have screws on it. And now the next thing you want to do is install your switches. Now you want to make sure that your PCB is either north facing or south facing, because that means that your switches are going to go in a certain direction. So if it's north facing, obviously the switch orientation is going to be facing north. And if it's south facing, then the switch orientation is going to be facing south. Now what this all means is that if it's facing north, you may have interference with cherry profile keycap sets. So if you wanted to use a cherry profile keycap set, I definitely recommend getting a south facing keyboard. Now once you install all the switches, you can do another mod that is optional, and that is the tape mod. And basically what you do is you use a easily removable tape. You don't want to really use duct tape or anything like that because that can damage the back of the PCB. And you want to add 2 to 3 layers of this painter's tape to the back of the PCB. Make sure to not cover the USB module or the daughter board connection to the PCB. Just have that clear and any screw holes. Other than that, just put 2 to 3 layers of tape. Now some people like putting 1, it's just personal preference, but the best way to go about it is trying 2. And if you don't like 2, then you can take off 1 layer. And it's surprising how much of a difference this can make. I decided not to do the PE foam mod for this keyboard, but I did do the tape mod. So like I said, these are all optional mods. So if you don't like it, it's easily removable. And that goes for the PE foam mod and the tape mod. But those are probably the most popular mods of 2021. So I obviously have to mention them. The next thing you want to do after you put the tape on the PCB and everything's all put together, switches and all that stuff, you want to put some foam into the case. Now, some people like to use neoprene foam, sorbothane foam, and it just makes it have less ping or hollowness inside the case. But sometimes if the foam is too thick, it can make it hard to close, and some people don't like the fact that it sounds very muted if you have case foam. So some people like to use polyfill because it removes the hollowness of the case but keeps the switch sound signature. So that is also something I would recommend you check out. And once you have all that done and you have the polyfill or case foam or anything like that inside the case, you can put everything together, screw it in, and now the last thing you have to do is put on the keycaps. Putting on the keycaps is very simple. You want to align the switch hole with the keycap hole and you want to just go to town. Obviously, depending on what layout you have, you want to make sure that your keycaps support your keyboard layout. So that is something to keep in mind before you buy a keyboard or buy keycaps. You want to make sure that it fits the keyboard that you're going to be using. Once you have everything done, you will have a finished keyboard. Congrats! This is the keyboard I built, and I'll be leaving a sound test so you guys can hear how it sounds. Hopefully this video was very helpful for you, and if I missed anything and you didn't like something I said or I said something wrong, feel free to correct me in the comments down below. I'm not perfect. I do hope this helps some beginners learn how to build the keyboard. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.